if the Dodgers win this thing, like I think we both expect them to, is this bad for the next CBA if the Dodgers just win back-to-back?
If the owners want to create a situation to fight really hard for a salary cap, they are going to fight really hard for a salary cap, whether the Dodgers win the World Series or not. My personal opinion about this, and this is just speaking for me, I do not. All right, so Shohei Ohtani in the pennant clinching game had arguably the greatest baseball game ever played by a human being, right? He is the biggest, most popular baseball star in the world. He's becoming one of the most popular athletes in the world. I know this is tied in with some of the changes to the ratings, so it's not entirely accurate, but even discounting that, the ratings for baseball over the last couple of years have been trending way up.
Mm-hmm.
After a period in which baseball was not a particularly cool sport, you've got Ohtani, you've got Skeens, you've got Judge. Like, these guys were breaking through. They're breaking through in the United States. They're breaking through in Japan, especially. Major League Baseball is incredibly popular in Japan.
Giants and Yankees are going to open up next season on Netflix.
Yes. You've got TV deals, kind of expanding the universe. And that's not fan friendly because this is turning into the NBA where you need 26 channels and streaming services to watch the game. And this is part of my job and it's my wife's job. So from that doesn't affect me because we have all of these streaming services and I can also write them off on my 99 and all of that type of stuff. But I understand it's not necessarily fan friendly. I will say for the growth of the sport, for actual collective bargaining, I don't think it's ever going to be bad that Shohei Ohtani, the biggest star in the sport, is in the World Series and having games like this in the playoffs. You are going to have a tremendously hard time convincing me that that is bad.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing in terms of direct revenue driving between TV deals, ratings, streaming deals, ballpark related revenues, does not really indicate that things are going badly. Now, if they want to fight really hard for a salary cap, will Rob Manfred stand up there in next December and say the Dodgers are winning too much, we need more parity? Yeah, but if he's going to do that anyway, right? Yeah. Like, he's going to do it anyway. So
he's going to point to the Brewers and
right. I don't think in actuality it is bad. I would also point out that Toronto Blue Jays are owned by Rogers Communications, who has more money than the reason we say that Steve Cohen is the richest individual owner in MLB is because of the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays corporate ownership is incredibly well funded. They are a relatively small cog in a huge national level communications company. The Blue Jays also run an incredibly high payroll. The Blue Jays signed Vladimir Guerrero to the second biggest contract in MLB, or the third, depending on how you view the Ohtani deal in terms of present value and deferrals. But either the second or third biggest contract in MLB history, like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
After, they were the runner-up on Ohtani. They wanted to sign Ohtani to the same deal that the Dodgers did. It turned out he didn't want to leave his lovely beach abode in Orange County. I can't blame him, right?
I was watching, I haven't finished it yet, but there's a new Expos documentary on Netflix.
I watched that the other day, yeah.
And, just reliving that strike, which is literally about a salary cap and looking like, then that this is going to be a big decision, probably related to that this year or the next year at the end of next year as well is kind of interesting.
Yeah. I think there's a chance that there's a lockout I think there's a very good chance there's going to be a lockout. I think there's a much smaller chance that we're actually going to lose games. I think there's a chance that a salary cap is going to be a major issue in the lockout.
Don't tell Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper's pissed. He had Manfred, he had to yell at Manfred, and then he got dissed by his own team.
He
He's
seemed
really
to take
mad
that
right
very
now.
personally. He went to the Athletic and said some very pointed things in response to that too.
Yes.
But I think all of that's going to be true whether the Dodgers win the World Series or not. I think that from a fan perspective, there will be like 3% more fan sympathy towards the owner's position if that happens. But also, who cares? Like, this is one of the, when this is happening 13 to 16 months from now, are people really going to remember that the Dodgers won the World Series 2 years? Like, what will then have been 2 seasons ago?
Maybe if they win it three
if they win it 3 in a row, yeah, people are going to start. But yeah, I mean, again, the crazy thing about this discussion is that this is the highest competitive balance time literally in the history of baseball. The Dodgers are the first team in over a decade to win pennants back-to-back. There has not been a World Series back-to-back in 25 years. Smaller market teams are winning. Teams are winning occasionally pretty much out of nowhere, like the Rangers a couple of years ago. Like, nobody had the Rangers winning that World Series until they won that World Series.
People so the idea didn't really care about that World Series, by the way.
Yeah, yes. I think it's much better for baseball for Shohei Ohtani to have been in the World Series the last couple of years.
You have back-to-back World Series.
Yeah.
Shohei and Aaron Judge, Yankees and Dodgers, and then this year with the Blue Jays, and the Blue Jays have half of Canada watching. So
yeah, I saw an article, and I know these numbers are completely fake, but like the Canadian rating for Game 2 is like a 17 share or whatever. Like, it was just like completely off the charts. And yeah, like, this is, they haven't been in the World Series in 32 years. Like, this to me, this is a good World Series. If the Mariners made it, it would have been even better, because that would have been an even better story. And they've got, in some cases, like Julio Rodriguez is a much more charismatic star than like anybody on the Blue Jays, even if he's like, Vlad's a better player than him by a pretty significant margin. But, and Vlad himself is a pretty charismatic and pretty big star. But yeah, I think that it is an easy narrative to say that the Dodgers are ruining baseball. And to me, it just really doesn't. Like, it feels like fans of teams that wish their team was as successful as the Dodgers have been, which I'm sure is a lot of the listening base to this podcast, because,
Well, look, if Ohtani's contract isn't structured the way that it is, we don't have any excuses, right? Can
I give my 90-second rebuttal to the Ohtani contract thing?
Mm-hmm.
They're having to put $40-something million in an interest-bearing account for him every year. They are not just floating these payments. They have, by the CBA, within, I believe it's 18 months, they have to put the money in a lockbox account. They are not just, these are not like payments that they're going to make 12 years from now. Like, the money has to be set aside in a trust account for them.
But they're able to monetize his popularity.
Of course they are. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and if he's driving $150 million in revenue and being paid 40, right?
If he signed with the Giants, if he signed with the Blue Jays, we would have had the same exact contract. So it's really out of pettiness, but that is the one thing where if you look at it, you go, okay, that you can complain about that contract as a fan speaking point, but it would have been the same no matter what.
Sure, but I think people have the idea with the deferrals, it's like the Bobby Bonilla deferral, where he's going to be paid this money deep in advance. And from his perspective, that's true. What this all actually is a tax dodge for the athlete, because he's going to go establish residency, whether it's in Japan or somewhere else, some other tax shelter. after he's retired and not be subject to California state income tax. That's what's actually going to happen here. So he's screwing your state pretty badly. But, in terms of the actual, any team that signed Ohtani was going to make the contract back. Ohtani should have been paid $120 million a year, but he didn't want to be. And look, as you are a fan of a number of sports, including several that have salary caps. You are an NBA fan, you're an NFL fan. When you put these salary caps in place, it encourages players to go and build super teams like this. It would encourage, Gunnar Henderson in 3 years, because he's not going to be able to make this super huge amount of money. He just might decide to go to the Dodgers because he wants to have a chance to win a championship. He wants to play with Shohei Ohtani. He wants to, whoever else is on the team at that time. The existence of a salary cap, especially depending on how it's structured, does not necessarily incentivize competitive balance, and some cases incentivizes teams to be a little cheaper about it. But the harder they make the structure in the NBA, the more it's encouraged players to go team up together.
Well, for some reason, the NFL of all places has a salary cap structure where the Green Bay Packers can just inherit like the top paid defensive lineman and they can pay him. And that's pretty interesting the way that the NFL has done it, but the NFL is also very cutthroat where you can just fire anybody at the drop of a hat and nobody cares.
So that's centralized revenue sharing. That's what's driving that. The NFL does not have much localized revenue. The vast majority of revenues are generated on a league-wide basis and shared equally with the teams.
And that was driven from like the beginning, essentially.
Yes.
Like I forget that. I listened to a podcast where they kind of explained it all and who were the owners that really fought for that. And then of course Jerry Jones found ways to circumvent that.
Yeah, of course he did. Yeah. He's Jerry Jones, right? But he's also the owner that traded Micah Parsons for incredibly stupid and weird reasons. I mean, that dates back to basically the dawn of televised football and televised sports. So you're talking the immediate post-war era. That's never going to happen in baseball. I know people really want that to happen. It's just not going to. The Yankees and the Mets and the Dodgers and the Giants, because they're another team that's going to be included in here, are not going to want to devalue their franchises by literally billions of dollars to help out the Rays. It's just not.
And you can even see that from MLB trying to get all of these local TV deals, and the teams that actually make a good amount of money, the Dodgers, Yankees, Red Sox included, they're not going to want to sell their rights to Major League Baseball for on the cheap just to make the viewing experience easier for them to sell.
And I think there's been over the course of 6 CBA cycles, every cycle there's tweaks and increases to revenue sharing. There's various things that are done to try and make it more profitable. Another one of the dirty little secrets is that franchise values, even for the quote small market, lower revenue teams, are rising so fast that these owners are, even if they are showing a paper loss, are still making so much in equity value, which has that you can borrow against that equity. You can turn it into cash flow if you want. And also, if you don't want, you can sell it and get the cash that way. And somebody else who's richer than you is going to surely come in. I can't wait for the day when oil money hits baseball, because we all know it's happening. It's going to happen in every sport.
You can't wait. You can wait. You just
that was
know
sarcastic, by the way. Yes, I do not want that to happen, but it's absolutely. There are there are hundreds of uber rich guys who want to be in a very small club, a very exclusive club, and a very limited number of them actually get to be in that club.
Yep.
So there's never, again, literally the Rays just got sold for a fairly large amount of money. That's it. You mentioned the Expos documentary on Netflix, which is very good, although you have to turn the automatic dubbing off because it will drive you crazy if you don't.
I couldn't figure out how to do that on my Apple TV.
You have to turn it to French language with English subtitles.
Oh, there you go.
Because they did not dub the English into French, but they did dub the French into English. So that's the trick. Yeah, I posted about that on Blue Sky, and somebody told me that, and that increased my enjoyment once I turned it back on a day or two later. But yeah, like there's a couple of teams that would not be able to run a $200 million payroll sustainably. Like the Reds probably wouldn't. The Reds, I believe, have the least wealthy owner in baseball and have relatively low rights. But for the most part, most of these teams are owned by people that are rich enough to float this amount of money and would not realistically be losing a ton of money even if they did so. But they're good. The Pirates are going to make a lot more money if they run a relatively low payroll.
Sure.
And, even the uber rich guys like to play scoreboard and make even more money. So again, to me, a lot of this, there are competitive balance problems within baseball. There are financial inequities within baseball. Those, like anything, those are blown out of proportion to fit a narrative when people want to impose their pre-existing belief systems on the sport, or for even more nefarious purposes, like I just want to make more money, which I don't know whether that's actually nefarious, but perhaps within the context of the Tampa Bay Rays, it might be. Sure. Not to keep beating on the Rays, I should just pick the Colorado Rockies instead, right? But you've also, like, some of these teams are just incredibly poorly run. Like the Angels are just like a badly run baseball franchise. The Angels had Shohei Ohtani. The Angels declined to participate in the last phase of the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes. They had Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout on the same team for 6 years and didn't win anything. That's not a systemic problem with baseball. That's a problem with that franchise. It's a problem with one very bad owner who's among the worst owners in the entirety of professional sports. He's, Artie's like right up there with like Woody Johnson, right? Like, wow. Where it's just self-defeating rich guy isms. But yeah, I don't think it's bad if the Dodgers win. I personally would probably find it a little more entertaining if the Blue Jays won.
Yeah,
I like kind of the underdog story. It would be cool if a team that hasn't won since I was a kid won again. But no, I don't actually think it's. I don't think it's bad for baseball, and I don't think it's going to cause a strike or a lockout.